morning, good evening, and good afternoon, viewers and listeners of our program called Straight Up. We have been talking for quite some time about what has been happening on the elections front. And that has been a very interesting topic for many of our viewers because they would like to be kept up to date with developments on this very important front, which has to do with who will be the next government after March 2nd, 2020. Recently, there has been a big hullabaloo about the removal of 28,000 names from the voters list. But we will talk more about this in our next program. I believe it is important at this point in time for us to make a different discussion this morning. And this is about the crime situation in Guyana. Now, I have been in this sector for almost 10 years, that is, as the Minister of Home Affairs. And I can tell you that sector is a pretty difficult sector to oversee. In addition to that, I have been the parliamentary spokesperson on public safety and security in the Parliament of Guyana. Well, now the Parliament, as far as the PPP is concerned, has come to an end. We now have to await the election of a new Parliament in order to follow what takes place in the House, as we expect laws to be passed by the new government, that is the PPPC, in order to address the crime situation in our country. But I'd like to make a few points and to elaborate on those points in order for us to have a fairly good appreciation of how the crime situation in Guyana, and in fact in any country, ought to be addressed. Now, I must confess that this is not a favorite topic for most people. People like to read about the crime situation, some don't. People like to hear about the crime situation, but some don't listen to it because it is too much of a stressful topic. But that notwithstanding, it's a very much debated topic. It's debated in the media, it's debated in the marketplaces, it's debated in the public places, and it's debated among families and friends. It is even debated among the diaspora overseas. So the crime situation is one that is worrisome for a significant amount of people, both inside and outside of Guyana, and quite justifiably so. I mean, after all, who would not be concerned about the crime situation in their country? Even if people live abroad, they have relatives, they have friends in Guyana. Some are very close relatives, some are very close family relations. And most people abroad are concerned about the welfare of their friends and their families in Guyana, and even those who live here are concerned about the welfare and the protection of their family and close relatives. So why is it that crime is not a favorite topic for a lot of people, but at the same time, why is it so much debated? Why is this so? This is so because of one fundamental reason. And that reason is it has to do with the loss of life. It has to do with the loss of limb, and it has to do with the loss of property. Life, limb, and property is what one could describe as the three most, if not very important, aspects of any human being. Who wants to who wants to lose their life? Who wants to lose property? Or who wants to lose a part of their body as a result of a crime committed by persons who thrive on other people's well-being. Life is a very precious thing for everyone. Only the other day, and this is not to do with crime, we read in the local newspapers of a little baby almost 1 year old wandering off and falling into a pond and drowning. Life of a 1 year old, how much more precious could that be? They have not even started out in life as yet. But nevertheless, people feel for these things. So life is very important for all of us, whether we are alive or whether we live in Guyana or not. Property is also an extremely part of our human endeavor. You buy a property, you buy a motor car, you buy a TV, or any other form of property after working so hard, only to have bandits invade your home and take away your precious belongings. Jewelry which your grandmother or your mother might have given to you at marriage or at some important event. All of that, bandits who invade your home would take away and leave you propertyless. Limb, meaning a part of your body. When the bandits invade the home, they would come with a cutlass or they would come with a firearm and threaten you. Even when you give them all that you have, they still threaten you to tell you that you have more and you must find it and give it to them. If you don't, then they beat the hell out of you, they chop you, or they shoot you. And this is what makes the crime situation and discussions and debates on the crime situation so frightening for so many people. And that is why it is important. Now I'd like to make a very important point that I have been making while I was the Minister of Home Affairs. And I have insisted that crime is a subset of public safety and security. Let me repeat that. Crime is a subset of public safety and security. What do we mean by a subset? By a subset we mean that crime is not a standalone issue. It's not a standalone phenomenon. It is part and parcel of public safety and security. That is what we mean by it being a subset, because public safety and security has many subsets. So that, for example, apart from crime, you have road safety. That's a subset of public safety and security. So you have many other areas of public safety and security that is made up of various components. And why do I make this argument that crime is a subset of public safety and security? I make that point because if a government does not have a well thought out public safety and security framework, policy positions, or architecture, if they do not have that, then trust me, it surely will not have a crime strategy that is aimed at dealing with the problems that affect people insofar as protection for life, limb, and property is concerned. Now, public safety and security is basically the policy framework in which governments operate in order to address, as I said, not only crime, but road safety and so many other aspects of public safety and security. The drug situation is another subset. Fighting drugs is another subset of public safety and security. Although all of them are interrelated and interconnected. They are not standalone issues. Now, if the crime situation gets out of control, like it was when the Feynman gang was wreaking havoc in our country, if the drug situation gets out of control, like it is at this point in time, and if road safety is totally out of control like it is now, with so many people dying unnecessarily on the streets of our country, that means that public safety and security is in jeopardy. It means, in effect, there is no public safety and security for the people of the country. Once those subsectors fall apart, it means that those who are managing the public safety and security sector, those who have oversight of it, and usually these are the politicians. It is the politicians that deal with the policy framework for public safety and security. And it is the crime fighters, law enforcement, namely the police, that addresses the crime situation in our country. But it is the politician who sets the policy framework in which the police force is expected to function. Policy direction is the responsibility of the politician in the executive and in the cabinet. Crime fighting is the responsibility of law enforcement. And the moment the politician is sleeping, or is drinking and not doing his job, or is traveling every 4 months out of the country, trust me, public safety and security will fall apart. And this is precisely what is happening in our country, regrettably. We're not happy to talk about this, but the fact of the matter is we have a public safety and security minister who wants to be the prime minister, although he was the crime minister and couldn't solve the crime situation. Now he's aiming to be the prime minister. My friends, trust me. If a minister or a person who purports to be a minister could not and cannot deal with the crime situation in our country, you tell me, if you can, how that same person could effectively be a prime minister of the country. Cannot happen. And so, once you have the individual who is a civilian overseeing and reporting to Parliament and Cabinet about public safety and security, while the crime situation has gone completely out of control, I am saying to you, he does not qualify to be the Prime Minister of this country. And in the same way as his colleague, Mr. Nagamutu, was a rubber stamp, at the time when he was Prime Minister, this individual, I think, will be worse than a rubber stamp. Will be, I don't know what is the name for something that is worse than a rubber stamp. Maybe a staple machine. But even a staple machine holds things together. The question is, will he be able to hold things together when he failed to hold the public safety and security situation together? So to effectively fight crime, you do not necessarily only have to have a good police force, which is something that is always debatable. Because anytime the crime situation escalates, it's the Ministry of Public Safety and Security that comes under the microscope, as well as the police. And you know what is so intelligent of our people? They know how to make the connection. There is no Guyanese who is following the crime situation in our country that will say, hey, you know what? It's not Ramjatan who's responsible for that. It's not Mr. James who's responsible for that. It's Walla Lawrence. Or it's Jai Paul Sharma. They're not going to do that because they know very, very well, trust me. Guyanese are smart enough to know who is responsible for the breakdown in public safety and security, and as a consequence, the issues to do with the crime situation of country. They will point their finger straight in the face of Mr. Ramjatan, who has been afflicted by what you call red carpet fever. He wants to be the Prime Minister of Guyana, when in fact he failed as the Crime Minister of the country. Now, why is this framework so important? The framework for public safety and security is important because it lays the basis. It sets the policy framework. It provides the analysis. It provides the policy direction in which crime is to be fought by the police. The moment you have a minister getting involved in fighting crime, and he's going out there as though he's a policeman, like Mr. Ramjatan does from time to time, to get some publicity, people ask questions. Is he a policeman? Is he a detective? He is the one that should be setting the policy. So the framework lays the basis, the theoretical basis, the philosophical basis, as well as the policy direction for fighting crime. And that is why it is so important. Now, we've heard for quite some time that the government had received help from the United Kingdom in the form of an expert to formulate a new policy, a new framework for the fighting crime and for public safety and security. That he formulated a strategic plan. And by the way, when I went to the Ministry of Home Affairs in 2011, I found maybe about 10 different strategic plans. Imagine that, about 10 different strategic plans were drawn up by previous administrations to deal with the fight against crime. We took on the task of formulating a new one because we said to ourselves, hey, obviously these plans are outdated and did not work. And so with a new government in office, we decided to formulate a new plan. And we did that. Now, the British government had offered us help to formulate that plan. But we ran into some differences with the British government as to how this plan ought to be formulated and who would formulate this plan. They wanted to have British ex-policemen in the administration, at the office of the president, and within the police force to do that. And we said, no, we don't need that. We think we have competent people in Guyana who can do that, who can formulate such a plan. And so that help never actually got off the ground. But when this new government came in, they kept criticizing us when we were in the government that we refused to accept the help from the British government. And then the bright boys, the experts on crime and security, they decided to bring a man by the name of Mr. Coombe to Guyana to help them to formulate the plan. Well, Mr. Coombe has come and gone. But the nation is still in the dark about where is this plan. The plan was to be laid in Parliament. I kept asking questions over and over again. Where is the plan in the Parliament? I kept asking that question. And they kept saying, Oh, don't worry, Mr. Rohee, the plan is coming. We will lay it soon in the House. Well, the Parliament has virtually come to an end. Never was any plan laid in that House. And trust me, I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Granger, who is the top-notch expert on security, has shelved that plan because he knows it all. And he has a set of people around him who would tell him what he wants to hear. And so we do not have any strategic plan. We do not have a strategic plan in Guyana to deal with public safety and security, and as a result of that, no plan to fight crime. Once we were told that the plan was at Mr. Silal Prasad, who was then Commissioner of Police. And then we were told that the plan was moved from the Commissioner of Police's office to the Minister of Public Security's office. And then another time we were told that the plan went back to the office of the President. What you call ringer roses. So with all this merry-go-round actions, if there were actions at all, we end up with nothing to talk about insofar as the government is concerned and their security plan is concerned. So the point I'm making by virtue of referring to that experience is that there exists no policy framework to deal with public safety, and maybe that's the reason why Mr. Ramjatan wants to get out from that place where he is right now. Maybe he feels he needs to do a more cushy job, a more throwback job, because he can't handle. You know, there was one time a statement in the press, a confession, if I may put it that way, in the newspapers, when he said that every night he goes to bed, he wakes up with a headache. Because for him, public safety and security is a big headache for him to manage. And perhaps it would seem, as many people have said, that he wants to get out. He wants what is called a get out of jail card in order to live a more comfortable and cushy job, such as the Prime Minister of our country. Now I'd like to make this other point, that unlike what the government is saying, which is in fact a whole heap of trash, public safety and security is multidimensional. In other words, public safety and security has various manifestations, and I will deal with that in a moment. I will deal with just one aspect of that. But the point I want to emphasize on is this, that number one, you can have the best technology, you can have the most expensive technology. They've mounted these cameras around the city, very expensive, bought from China. You can have all the money poured into the security sector as they're having right now. Every year the budgetary allocation for the security sector is growing larger and larger. So you can have tons of money in the security sector, and you can have all the experts that you want in the security sector. But here's the thing, that wouldn't solve the problem at all. The best technology, the most modern and up-to-date technology, the tons of money that you can ever think about, and all the experts that you can even hire. It's not that is the answer. Those things are not the answer. Because in fact, many countries have proven that even though you have those things, it doesn't mean to say that crime will be solved. I had experience when I was Minister of Home Affairs, and I mention this from time to time because it's important for us to bring our experiences to bear when discussing these topics. We bought for every prison location scanners. In other words, before you enter the prison, just like at the airport, you have to pass through a scanner. Because the idea was to detect whether any illegal items were entering the prisons, whether in the form of drugs, whether in the form of a firearm, whether in the form of some weapon of different types, whether in the form of some kind of, food or something like that. Nothing is supposed to enter the prison unless it is an authorized item by the prison authorities. But many people try to smuggle things into the prison. And by the way, it's not only civilians who try to get things into the prison, it's some of the very prison officers themselves, most unfortunately. And so we install these scanners at the various prison locations with a view to stopping the smuggling of illegal items in prison. But guess what? Some people sabotaged the scanners. They made the scanners dysfunctional. And by doing that, it meant that the floodgates were open again for the illegal items to enter the prison. In addition to that, we also set up cameras all around the prison to spot any type of illegal activity of different kinds in the prison locations. But here's the thing, even the camera system was sabotaged. Good technology, lots of money paid for these things. And like I said, you can have the best technology, you can have lots of money, you can have the experts, but at the end of the day, it does not boil down to meaning you will have public safety and security and an effective fight against crime. So, what is the situation now? The answer is, while these things are important, that I just pointed out, while good technology is important, while money is important, while experts are important, they do not mean that the situation will be resolved once and for all. So if that is the case, then what is the solution? Because we can't only talk about problems, and we cannot only make criticisms. We have to make constructive proposals, and we have to point to solutions. So in this case, what is the solution? I have insisted that the solution lies in the human factor. Why do I say that? Because in the case of the best technology, if you do not have competent, trustworthy, and professional people who are dedicated to their job to manage the technology, to protect the technology, what do you think will happen? So the human factor, meaning personnel, is critical in maintaining the technology, protecting the technology, and utilizing the technology that it was bought for. The same thing has to do with money. The Parliament allocates a certain amount of money to the security sector. But if the people in the security sector do not manage those resources in a way that public get what is called value for money, if the money is spent on wasteful items that are not needed, if money is given as kickbacks to contractors, if there's corruption in the system, then that money that has been allocated by the parliament would be of no effect whatsoever. And so you come back again to the human factor. You need professional, honest, dedicated and committed people in the sector to manage your resources, apart from having them to manage the technology. And like I said, you can have all the experts, but you have experts who are experts. You have experts and experts, meaning some people come to you with a very impressive CV. They tell you they've been working in so many countries. What they don't tell you is that they changed jobs maybe about 50 times. Or maybe they were dismissed so many times from the job that they had. And so the CV could be very impressive, but the performance, the discipline, the professionality of the individual is what matters in this particular sector. And that is what makes this sector so challenging. The human factor is what matters. So it was not only these items that I pointed out that is important, it's the human factor that is important. Now let me move quickly to another issue here, linked to this human factor issue. You know why elections are so important? And do you know the reason why people all over the world are very concerned about who runs the government? Look at what's happening in Chile. Look at what's happening in Argentina. Look what's happening in Lebanon. Look what's happening now in Iraq. In all those, for example, in Haiti. In all of those countries, people are marching and demanding accountability. They are not satisfied with the governments in their country. Too much corruption. Now, elections are important because, as we all know, the outcome of the elections has to do with who runs the government the next turn around. If you have in power a government that has lost the confidence of the people, that the people do not trust, and if you have a government elected like we had in 2015, the APNU AFC in office, look how in a matter of 4 years, people are ready to kick them out from office. So, the government is important that is elected, or the party is elected. It's so important to run the government because at the end of the day, it is this government that is now formed that addresses all these questions. And one of the areas that the government has to address is the public safety and security question. Now, if the people have lost confidence in the government, the people have lost confidence in the government, if the people don't trust the government any longer because they've lied, they've misled, they've deceived, they've beaten the people, they've done so many things. When I say beaten, I mean psychologically. How do you expect these people who have suffered so much under the government to give them 100% or even 99.9% support in the fight against crime or in public safety and security? So it all comes back to elections. People want elections in Guyana now. In fact, people wanted this government to go since March of this year, because the crime situation and the public safety and security situation has gone completely out of control. And that's one of the reasons why the people want to see the back of the government. And so it comes back to the whole question of elections. And it comes back also to the question of the human factor. Human factor is in the electorate. Electorate that elects a government which the people can trust, which they can confide in, which they can believe, and which ultimately they can give their support to in the fight against crime and in relation to public safety and security. And that's what I mean by the people factor, by the human factor. Now, once you have people like that working in the various sectors who are committed, who are not going to see something go wrong and leave it, but try to correct it. Once you have people like that in the system, trust me, my friends, you have a government that is about to take off successfully. It's all about the trust, the confidence, the belief of the people in the government. And that flows back to supporting the government in their policies. And in this case that we're talking about, in their policies in terms of fighting crime, reducing crime, preventing crime, and that, as I said, being a subset of public safety and security that the people support. You have to put a minister there that the people feel that they can trust. But you have a government that came in. One of the first things they did was to take away the vehicles from community policing. Now, community policing has to do with people. It's the people in the various communities who form these community policing groups. I remember some very important people in this country who are now prominent businessmen used to be part of community policing, what's called the impact group, like Mr. C.N. Sharma. Many of these people were in community policing groups. Now, the point is that with community policing groups, note the word community, meaning people, common people from every village, every street, every community, every town had community policing groups. This is where we come back again to the human factor. And these are trustworthy people who volunteer, who give themselves, their service. They want to give back something to the community. And the best way they feel they can give back something is to be part of a community policing group. But you know what? When the government of the AP and UFC came in, they disbanded most of the community policing groups. They took away the vehicles, they took away the firearms, and they left community policing hanging to dry out. As a result of that, many of the groups collapsed, people lost interest, and as a result of that, many communities were left unprotected because the police do not have the capacity to police every street, every village, and every town. They do not have the capacity, and many do not want to do that. And so the answer to that was to be found in the creation of community policing groups, as well as what is called neighborhood police. Neighborhood police as well as community policing. That is the human factor in fighting crime and in assuring public safety and security. Human security, that is what is critical. Giving back something to the community. You have in place a government that talks about constitutionalities and rule of law when it is doing completely the opposite. And that is why people have lost total interest in the government and wants elections as quickly as possible. So we have a high incidence of gun crimes. Many of the crimes today are committed with a firearm. Where are the firearms coming from? This government, when they were in the opposition, said that they're going to stop the firearms from coming across the borders, whether it's from Venezuela, Brazil, or wherever. They have failed miserably to do so. They have failed miserably. The firearms are still pouring into the country. And as a result, you have people renting firearms just like they rent their cars. They rent a firearm. That firearm is used in the commission of a crime to threaten people and to kill people. And so gun crimes is one of the biggest, most serious crimes in our country today. Over 2,000 crimes committed in this country are unresolved. over 2,000 crimes remain unresolved in Guyana. What is the problem? Is it the CID that is not working properly? Is it the investigative skills of the police is not up to scratch? This is very important because everyone who had a crime committed against them would like to see a solution to the situation. In Starbuck Market and around Starbuck Market, every single day someone is being robbed. Either of a cell phone, a piece of jewelry being snatched from them, pickpockets stealing their money from them and their purses and so forth. And the crime situation around Starbuck Market, and in fact in Georgetown, what is called A Division, is one of the worst that one can imagine. But it has stretched its tentacles in Essequibo, in Berbice, and in many other parts of the country. So my friends, Guyana is not very well off when it comes to dealing with crime, public safety and security. This government has spoken about what they wanted to do and what they would have done when they got into the government. Well, they've been in the government for almost 5 years now. And many people are still scratching their heads to find out what is it that they have done. Because every single day, a robbery is being committed either in someone's home, or a car is being stolen, or some other crime or the other. They said they're building a new prison for over 2,000 prisoners. Well, my friend, we've never had a prison population over 2,000. So where are they going to put this 2,000? Who are these 2,000 prisoners they're expecting? Maybe they're expecting an increase in crime. And they're expecting the courts to be more proactive. So another prison, 2,000 more to be hardware. They say they're going to establish an air wing for the Guyana police force. Soon they'll be flying out of government on their own wings, or the people will throw them out. So no air wing as yet. And the two premier investigative bodies that are to fight crime in this country, SOCU, is now being challenged by corruption charges. The head of SOCU had to be sent home because of corruption charges. Just imagine that. Serious organized crimes unit, SOCU, the head of that has been sent home on investigation for corruption charges. And in the police force, you have the same problem. Only the other day, Ramjatan, the crime minister who wants to be now the prime minister, he has been heard making statements to the effect that over more than 200 dirty cops have been dismissed from the police force. So, my friends, I'm not very happy as a former Minister of Home Affairs. I'm not saying that I was perfect in this sector. The sector is a very challenging sector, but what I can tell you is this: you can't be sleeping on the job, you can't be drinking on the job, you can't be going off and having a beer with your friends, you can't be going off and traveling to all countries of the world and having a nice, fancy, good life and expect the sector to be properly taken care of. You have to have what is called a hands-on. Don't mind the criticism people will make. They will say that you're too hands-on, but this is a country that requires ministers that have a hands-on approach to their sector. So unless that happens, particularly in the public safety and security sector, the crime situation will be out of control, as it is right now. And so, while we're not happy to paint this rather gloomy picture of what is happening, the fact of the matter is, it's a reality. And it's more than a perception. And by the way, remember, a lot of crimes are committed in this country that are not reported, what you call unreported crimes. Thousands of them are happening almost every month, but people don't go report them. You know why? Loss of faith. When you ask them, Why didn't you go to report to the police? They will ask you another question. What are they going to do? So you have a lot of these unreported crimes going on in Guyana. So my friends, this is a very important topic, not only for us to follow, but for us to decide. Come March the 2nd, 2020, we will be called upon to make some critical decisions. And that critical decision is to ensure that the human factor in fighting crime, in dealing with public safety and security, is brought back and made to function effectively. That the people who would have voted in a government such as the PPP, in whom they have confidence, who they trust, and who they know based on past performance as being a responsible government, you are the ones that will make this decision on March the 2nd, 2020. Let your conscience be your guide, and let these experiences that we're going through right now must not reoccur once again, once we have made that decision of the government which we want to see administering the affairs of Guyana. At the end of every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. There's a silver lining awaiting us. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And you have to find that light. You have to make that silver lining a reality. And come 2020, this is precisely what we are going to do. Thank you, my friends, for listening. Let us keep following the developments in Guyana as we move inexorably towards March the 2nd, 2020, when there will be a real time for change and a real change with the people's government, with the People's Progressive Party in office. Thank you and goodbye.